And hello everyone, welcome to today's Virtual East Arbitrator training. My name is Sherlyn Tung and I am the president of the Mood Alumni Association and a very avid supporter of the virtual and regular VisMoot competitions. So just to start off, we would like to thank you for agreeing to act as an arbitrator. It really means a lot to these students because they've put so much effort into it for the last year. With all of the time and studies that they put into this arbitration event, we just wanted to give you a few tips to give you some guidance on how to act as an arbitrator.
Now, if you took part in the virtual Vizies last year, you would have remembered that we were using Microsoft Teams as our platform for the virtual Vizies Mood. This year, we'll be using Zoom. So there's some procedural changes which the arbitrators need to be aware of in relation to entering and leaving a virtual hearing room. When all arbitrators are to begin their round, please show up 15 minutes beforehand in the main hearing room. Do not go directly to your hearing room. Go to the main room first. The host managers in the main room will then direct the arbitrators and send the arbitrators to their respective hearing rooms. So when you come in and you check in for attendance, please make sure that you're checking in at the main hearing room. Each match is monitored by a host manager, and each host manager will be monitoring 2 competitions at the same time. You may not see the host manager in the room, but trust me, they will be there and they will be watching. Hopefully, they will mostly stay invisible. However, if there is a technical issue or something which requires assistance, please just say so and the host manager will appear and provide assistance. Also, when time is running out and the room needs to be cleared, you may see the host manager enter the room to provide a reminder to the teams and the arbitrators that the round must finish by a certain time.
Now, as you know, every arbitration panel or every arbitration session is allotted 2 hours according to the schedule. This, however, doesn't mean that you get to use the entire 2 hours for the arbitration. The students have been trained and have learned throughout the year that they each get a specific amount of time for their arguments. You will see a total of 4 students, 2 on each side, 2 for respondents, 2 for claimants. 1 person from each team will argue procedural aspects and the second person will argue substance. Now, it's up to the students to decide how much time they would like to allot themselves, but it is important to note that each side gets 30 minutes total, and they need to fit within that 30 minutes. Now, for those of you experienced arbitrators, we know that giving both parties equal times is very important, but because this is a virtual event and also a competition, and we also need to ensure that everyone has sufficient time to move to their next rounds, we need to make sure that we stay within the time period allotted. So we please ask you to maintain or stick as close to the 1 hour allotted for the entire argument. In this respect, you will also need time to deliberate with your colleagues after the argument. So usually, if everything is perfect, if both sides get half an hour, then you as an arbitral tribunal will get 10 minutes after the session to deliberate. You will then invite the students back in and you will get another 10 minutes to give feedback. Overall speaking, out of the 2 hours, you will need to be out of the room. Both teams and arbitration, or the arbitral tribunal needs to be out 15 minutes before the second hour is up. So if you have any questions, you will have a host moderator in your room to answer any queries you may have, but timing-wise, we do ask that you stick to, as close as possible, the allotted time. Thank you.
Hearing protocol. As a reminder, we ask all the arbitrators to make sure that only the speakers, in other words, the oralists for the teams, and the arbitrators are the ones who have their cameras and microphones turned on. Any spectators, any coaches, or any other team members who are not speaking in the competition should be reminded to turn their cameras off and mute their microphones prior to the match starting. Also, please make sure that you remind the teams at the outset of the match that only those teams who are participating in this match should be allowed to be able to watch and observe the match. No outside teams should be allowed in. If you do find that an outside team member or someone who cannot identify themselves as a member of one of the teams participating in the match, you are empowered to either remove them or to call over a host manager who will then be able to remove them for you. Questions and feedback. Now, questioning and feedback is one of the most important parts of the Viz Moot, and it's something which the teams will be most looking forward to. Now, in terms of questioning, please make sure that you are not taking over the session in relation to your questioning, although you should definitely ask questions of the teams, both to gauge their knowledge of the law and their knowledge of the facts, but also to make sure that they have logic and common sense checked their arguments. However, don't get stuck on certain questions. There are certain points which the teams will not be able to address you on because they simply don't have the facts on the record for. So please avoid long, extended questions which take up the time of the teams and detract from their ability to make the arguments. Please also don't get stuck on a certain line of questioning, and make sure that the teams get a chance to make submissions and arguments on all of the points which they're raising. And most importantly, try and stay away from taking over the proceedings and telling war stories. There will be time enough for that later on during the cocktail sessions. Feedback. In relation to feedback, always make sure that you're trying to be positive, at least with your feedback. Many of these law students are taking part in the moot as their first experience of advocacy in a real or almost real setting. So don't be too negative with the teams when you're giving your feedback. Always give them something positive to start off with before proceeding into constructive criticism. Next, please also keep in mind that the teams are coming from a variety of different jurisdictions, from a diverse set of legal cultures, and for whom many, English is not a first or even second language. Just as you would not detract points from a client because their counsel does not have English as a first language, means that you should not deduct points from a team because they are having trouble with their English. Please make sure that you're giving comments and feedback which are relevant and substantive in relation to the advocate's arguments. We've all heard over the last year about eye contact and making contact with the camera. All the teams at this point will probably have heard that comment. So try and make relevant points that are related to their logic of the arguments, the use of authorities, or other substantive points which the teams can use to help improve their arguments going forward into the next rounds.
Moving on to the next topic today, we are going to discuss scoring of the teams. Now, scoring for each of the teams will range between 50 and 100. That means you cannot give a score lower than 50 and you cannot give a score higher than 100. Now, generally, the arbitrators are not required to have a unanimous agreement or consent on what scores to give each of the speakers. However, it is imperative that the arbitrators do discuss scoring with one another to ensure that they are somewhat within the same range, and also kind of just to have feedback for one another, just to see each other's thoughts. Generally speaking, the VIS administrators expect scores for the tribunal to be within a range of 10. So that means if somebody wants to score somebody a 50 and another person wants to score that same individual speaker a 100, there will be a situation following the event and the VIS administrators will reach out to you. That by no means requires you to have to score within the 10-point range, but we do encourage this as it makes things a bit easier for scoring purposes, but also because everyone is listening to the same panel.
For 2022, we're making some changes to how we do scoring. You will still receive a score sheet for guidance and for your own notes, but the actual scores will be kept electronically, recorded at the end of each session and after the feedback from the arbitrators. Once the oralist arguments have been completed, the arbitrators will retire to their breakout rooms to deliberate for a few minutes. When they return, the arbitrators will give a feedback session to the students of no longer than 10 minutes. Once that feedback session has been completed, the oralists and their supporters will be excused from the hearing room by the hearing managers. Now, you will have received a link either before or during your match. Click on that link and it will open up your personal score sheet. Please complete that score sheet, hit submit before you leave the hearing room. Once all 3 scores from the arbitrators have been received, the hearing managers will confirm that all the scores are in and note that the hearing rooms will be closed. You are then free to proceed on to your next argument, if you have one. Each hearing has its own unique link for the system and its own unique link to the scoring system. If you finish with all your arguments, you can simply close the app. Now, for those of you who are participating and judging in the elimination rounds, there are a few other points to note. Unlike the general rounds, in the elimination rounds, there are no numerical scores given to the teams. Instead, what you have to deliberate on is on which of the two teams should progress to the next round. Once that decision has been made, you are then to inform your hearing manager, not the teams. Once all the results have been recorded, the hearing managers will report to the Viz East team, who will then make the final announcement to all the teams at a later point.
Thank you again for taking the time to volunteer your services and your time to help judge the virtual Viz East moot. And I'm sure the teams and all the coaches are very grateful for your attendance and your patience throughout these proceedings. Thank you again also for taking your time to view this video and ensure that you take these points on board so that the virtual Viz East can proceed smoothly and without any complications. Thank you, and we hope to see you in the matches.